My name is Claire Thompson, and I'm 29 years old. If you're hearing my story right now, I want to pause for a second and ask you something. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop it down in the comments, because I'd love to know how far this story reaches. And before we go further, don't forget to rate this story from 1 to 10 at the end, and of course, subscribe, because what I'm about to share with you is not just a story, it's my life, and it begins with me opening my eyes in a place where nothing felt familiar. I woke up in the hospital with the dull, sterile smell of antiseptic filling my lungs, bright lights stabbing into my vision, and a pressure in my head so heavy that I thought my skull might split apart. I remember blinking slowly, trying to move my lips, trying to whisper a question. Where am I? But my voice was dry, broken, almost non-existent. The sound of machines beeped rhythmically around me, like some mechanical heartbeat that reminded me I was alive, but barely. My hand twitched against the stiff sheets, and that's when I realized there was a needle taped into my arm, a tube snaking down to a bag of clear fluid. My pulse raced, and in the chaos of half-memories and fractured thoughts, one terrifying truth hit me. I didn't know why I was there, who had brought me there, or worse, what had happened to me. And then, slowly, as if crawling out of a fog, the nurse's voice came through. "Miss Thompson, you're safe. You've had an accident." But my instincts told me otherwise. Something darker had put me here. And I was about to discover that the person responsible wasn't some stranger in the night. It was someone far closer than I could have ever imagined. The first days in the hospital blurred together, like scenes of a film I couldn't fully follow. Doctors and nurses hovered, speaking in hushed tones that carried just enough weight to unsettle me. They said words like trauma, contusion, and amnesia, but those were just clinical labels that didn't explain the gnawing emptiness in my mind. My head throbbed with every attempt to remember. I could recall fragments, the color of my old bedroom walls, the scent of fresh coffee, laughter echoing on a summer night, but not the people attached to those memories. Faces floated in the haze, but they dissolved when I tried to hold on to them. That absence was terrifying. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff with fog hiding the drop, knowing something critical was missing beneath the mist. On the third night, I woke up to find my mother sitting silently by my bed. At least they told me she was my mother. A gentle woman with tired eyes and trembling hands that reached for mine, as if she was afraid I'd disappear again. "Claire, sweetheart, you scared us," she whispered. Her lips trembled as she spoke, and though I didn't remember her, something inside me responded instinctively to the warmth of her voice. But even in that comfort, an unease lingered, because behind her, in the shadow of the doorway, a man stood watching. He didn't enter, didn't smile, didn't offer any words of relief. He just stared. My stomach twisted as though my body remembered something my mind had lost. When I blinked, he was gone, and I convinced myself maybe it was a hallucination brought on by the medication. Days passed, and the doctors pushed me to engage in memory exercises. They showed me photographs, asked me to identify people, places, events. Some faces stirred faint sparks of recognition, others none at all. But one photo caught my breath in my throat. A man standing close beside me, smiling, his hand gripping my waist possessively. The doctor said his name, introducing him as Daniel, your fiancé. The room spun, because even though I didn't remember him, a wave of dread crashed through me so violently that my fingers shook as I held the photograph. My heart didn't race out of affection. It pounded with warning. Something inside screamed at me. He's not safe. But everyone around me insisted he was my partner, my future, the one who'd been devastated by my accident. Then, late one evening, when the nurses thought I was asleep, I overheard two of them whispering outside my room. One said, "She's lucky to be alive after that fall." The other replied, "Fall? That's not what he told the doctors. He said it was a car accident." My skin prickled. Why would there be two different stories? Who was lying? Why did I wake up in this state with no memory, and why did my heart clench every time I saw Daniel's face? Deep down, I knew my injury wasn't just an accident. Someone had wanted me broken, confused, silent. And the most horrifying thought was that the one who did this might be the very person who pretended to love me. When the doctors explained that I had been in a terrible accident, I nodded politely as if I understood, but deep inside, their words sounded like fragments of a story that belonged to someone else. A car crash, they said. My vehicle had been found near the edge of the city, smashed against a guardrail on a deserted highway at night. No other cars were around, no witnesses. They told me I was lucky to be alive, but I could sense the hesitation in their eyes, the careful way they avoided answering certain questions. Who found me? Who called the ambulance? How long was I unconscious before arriving here? Every answer felt vague, every detail blurry. At first, I accepted it as part of the confusion from my head injury. But as hours passed, unease began to grow like a shadow creeping across my thoughts. The nurse would come in, smile sweetly, adjust my but when I asked her if anyone had come to visit me, she froze for a split second before answering. Not yet. That pause, that flicker of something behind her eyes, told me there was more she wasn't saying. I tried searching my own mind, digging through the fog for something, anything, but memories came in fragments, jagged shards like broken glass. A blurry image of headlights in the dark. A man's voice, calm yet sharp, telling me to stay quiet. A sudden feeling of dread, my hands gripping something. Maybe a steering wheel, maybe the edge of a seat. Then nothing but the crash, a deafening sound like the world splitting in two, and after that, darkness. My heart raced as I lay in that bed, realizing that if this wasn't an ordinary accident, then someone had been there with me. Someone had left me broken and alone. And if that person wasn't here to check on me, then perhaps they didn't want me to survive at all. Nights in the hospital became unbearable. I would wake up in the dark to the sound of footsteps in the hallway, slow and deliberate, stopping near my door. Sometimes the handle would rattle lightly, as if someone was testing whether it was locked. The first time it happened, I convinced myself it was just a nurse. But when I asked the staff the next morning, they all swore no one had been near my room during those hours. I began sleeping with the small remote for the nurse call button clutched tightly in my hand, my thumb hovering over it, ready. Fear became my constant companion, curling into the corners of my mind like smoke. I told myself I had to recover, I had to remember, because whoever put me in that hospital bed might not be finished with me yet. My name is still Emily, and though they tell me I'm 29 years old, I feel suspended somewhere between yesterday and forever, like a ghost trying to return to her body. Days blurred into each other with fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant, and the faint echo of beeping monitors. But beneath the routines of the hospital, I could sense layers of unease pulling me deeper, like I had been dropped into the middle of a puzzle with pieces missing. When visitors passed in the hallway, I studied their faces, searching for the one that might spark a memory, but recognition never came. It was only silence, an emptiness where my past should have been. At night, when the hospital quieted, I would whisper to myself, asking, "Who are you really, Emily? Who wanted to erase your life?" And sometimes, in those whispered moments, I felt as though the walls themselves were listening. One afternoon, a detective visited. He was polite, too polite, introducing himself as Detective Harris, his tone smooth but rehearsed, like he had spoken those same words too many times before. He asked me to recount the accident, though we both knew my memories were fractured. As I struggled to describe the fragments, the headlights, the voice, the dread, I caught something flicker in his eyes, a calculation. He scribbled notes, nodded, and told me they would look into it. But I noticed the way he shifted when I asked if anyone else had been in the car. The scene didn't show evidence of another passenger, he said, avoiding my gaze, his pen hovering just above the paper as though he was writing a script. He left me with a promise to return, but instead of reassurance, his words sank into me like stones. I knew in that moment that he was hiding something, or worse, protecting someone later. A woman came to my room. She claimed to be a friend, her smile wide but brittle. "Emily, you don't remember me, do you?" "It's okay, it's just the injury," she said softly, placing flowers by my bedside. But everything about her felt rehearsed, like she was performing grief rather than feeling it. I searched her face, the sharp lines of her jaw, the way her fingers tapped nervously against the vase, and felt a flash of something, fear, Anger. I couldn't tell. Were you with me that night? I asked suddenly. Her face froze for half a heartbeat before she laughed, brushing it away. Of course not. I just came when I heard. She didn't stay long, and when she left, I noticed she hadn't written her name in the visitor log. That detail haunted me, looping in my head until the anxiety turned to nausea. My dreams became darker as the days went on. I dreamed of hands on the steering wheel that weren't mine, of shadows moving in the passenger seat, of a voice whispering words I couldn't understand but felt carved into my skin. I woke in cold sweats, convinced someone was standing over me, watching. Once, I jolted awake to see a figure at the end of my bed, tall, unmoving, just standing there in the glow of the moonlight filtering through the blinds. I screamed, hitting the call button, and when the nurse rushed in, the figure was gone. They told me it was just a nightmare, a side effect of medication. But deep down, I knew what I saw. Someone had been there. Someone was checking if I remembered. The terror pressed heavier with each passing night, and I realized that the hospital, meant to heal me, was becoming a cage. I couldn't trust the detective. I couldn't trust the mysterious woman, and even the nurses gave me pause with their glances and whispers just outside my door. All I had was myself, a fractured self, piecing together the shards of who I was and what happened. I swore to myself that I would uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be, because the one who did this to me was still out there. And if I didn't remember soon, I feared they would come back to finish what they started. My name is Emily, and even as I write these words in my shaky, uneven handwriting on the hospital notepad, I can feel the weight of every moment pressing against me, demanding to be remembered. 29 years, they tell me, but I feel ancient now, older than the pain, older than the memory loss, older even than the hospital itself. The world outside my window hums with a life I no longer recognize. Car horns, people laughing, sunlight cutting through the blinds like broken glass. But here I am, lying in a bed, trying to stitch together pieces of a puzzle that keeps rearranging itself every time I blink. If you're watching this, please tell me from where you're watching. Drop it in the comments below. And as you listen, give the story a rating, out of 10, out of 5 stars, whatever you feel. Your voice matters because for so long mine didn't. That night, everything finally cracked open. It wasn't a flashback, it wasn't a dream. It was a surge of memory so violent it left me gasping for air. I remembered the road, the rain falling like shards against the windshield, my own hands trembling on the steering wheel. And then, like lightning, I saw him, my fiancé, Mark. The man I had loved for 3 years, the one who had promised me a future. He wasn't in the passenger seat. He was in the driver's seat. His face was twisted with something I had never seen before, a mixture of rage and fear, his knuckles white as he gripped the wheel. "You ruined everything," he hissed, his voice low and venomous, and then the car lurched as if it had a life of its own. We weren't in an accident. We were in an execution. The realization slammed into me like a second crash. Mark had tried to kill me. All this time, while I was lying here with my fractured skull and my empty memories, he was out there living his life, telling everyone I had been careless, painting himself as the heartbroken partner. I saw flashes of conversations, him whispering on the phone late at night, him shouting about money I hadn't known existed, him saying, "You don't know what's coming, Emily." It was a conspiracy threaded with betrayal, and I had been too blind to see it before. But now I remembered. I remembered everything, that I couldn't just stay silent. That same night, I called Detective Harris, my voice trembling but steady enough to say the words. It was Mark. He was driving. He tried to kill me. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then a sigh. "Emily, you need to stay calm," he said, but his voice had changed, no longer rehearsed, no longer polite. "We'll look into it." He hung up before I could say more. That's when it hit me. He wasn't going to protect me. He was going to protect Mark. They were in this together, but they underestimated me. For weeks, I had been pretending to be weaker than I was. While everyone thought I was helpless, I had been writing everything down, names, times, faces, small details they didn't think I noticed. I had also been recording my sessions with a friend who visited, whose real name, I learned from a nurse's slip-up, was Claire, Mark's lawyer. Every word she spoke became evidence, every nervous glance another crack in their armor. By the time they realized my memories were back, it was too late. I had already sent everything to a journalist friend, the one contact I had remembered in the haze of my amnesia, the only person I could trust. The story broke before Mark could reach me. Headline screamed, "Local man tried to kill fiancé for inheritance." The hospital filled with reporters, and this time, I didn't hide my face. I told the world everything. The accident, the betrayal, the cover-up. Mark was arrested at his office, and Detective Harris was suspended pending investigation. Claire vanished before the subpoenas arrived, but by then it didn't matter. The truth was out. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the author of my own survival. And now, as I sit here waiting to be discharged, I'm telling you all of this not just because it's my story, but because it might be yours too. Betrayal hides in the faces we trust. Danger wears the clothes of love, and survival starts with believing yourself even when nobody else does. If you're still here, still watching, still reading, I want you to tell me from where you're watching. I want you to rate this story. I want you to remember that no matter how dark it gets, you can claw your way back into the light. My name is Emily. I'm 29. And I am no longer a victim.